way, we had Sandra was calling in yesterday doing riddles. Okay, I know. Yeah, I used to work with Ricky Gervais. Anyway, doesn't matter. And we got complaints after the show. We didn't give the answer to her riddle. The answer is it makes a splash. That's all I'm going to say. If you weren't paying attention yesterday, that's tough. Morning, this is Iain Lee, BBC Three Counties Radio. What a miserable morning it is, weather-wise, and for some of you, sports-wise as well. Disappointing day for some of you yesterday. We'll be speaking to Watford fans this morning, and also an impartial Justin Dealey to find out how he's dealing with the heartbreak of a football team not perhaps living up to their expectations. If you want to have your say on yesterday's football, you can. I mean, I won't know what you're talking about, but I'll do my best to empathise with you. 75% of people living along the route of HS2, the high-speed railway, who apply for compensation, face being rejected. Are you one of them? And those Now Music compilations are 30 years old. What are your memories, girls? It's a girl thing. I don't think boys are really into those compilations, were they? I didn't need another Jason Donovan track. No, I had a Jason Donovan 12-inch already. Do you see? That's the level we're dealing with. Petty innuendo at 6:04 on a Tuesday, the day after a bank holiday. Oh, for goodness sakes. Lots of ways to get in touch. Facebook.com/BBC3CR. You can send me a text, 81333. Start your text 3CR. Put your name on it as well, otherwise it doesn't get read out. Not on my watch. And you can give me a call, 08459 455 555.
Across beds, hearts and bucks.
This is BBC Three Counties Radio.
Ah, well, we were hyping it up, and then, like a big balloon that's been trodden on by a 3-year-old child at a party, it burst, and everybody around it cried. I was freestyling now. I should stick to the script next time. Watford lost yesterday 1-0 to Crystal Palace in the playoff final at Wembley. Palace were awarded a penalty in extra time. Ex-Watford player Kevin Phillips took it and scored with 15 minutes to go. Well, the Horns were unable to equalise in the remaining time, sending Crystal Palace back up the Premier League for the first time in 8 years. Well, our reporter, Justin Dealey, was following the game. First of all, Justin, commiserations.
Thank you, Iain. Appreciate that.
I know you are a Luton supporter, but you will be feeling a lot of empathy for the Watford fans listening to this show this morning, won't you?
There was a lot of banter flying around last night, which was rather amusing. But in saying that, Watford fans are clearly very, very upset because their team, and on paper, they've got a fantastic squad. They've done so well this season. They've scored more goals than anybody else. They were the favourites going into this game. And for whatever reason, those players simply didn't turn up for the big occasion. So
they didn't turn up? Well, no wonder they lost. They didn't turn up. No wonder Crystal Palace beat them.
They didn't perform on the big day. I don't know why that was, and of course Zola, the manager, will be looking into that and trying to work that out, but they just didn't turn up. The fans that I spoke to last night arriving back in Hertfordshire were very disappointed. This is what they had to say.
Disappointed. Yeah. Disappointed. Very disappointed. That's a poor game for Watford, to be quite honest with you.
Pretty cheesed off because we never even turned up today. How's that?
I just thought Palace turned up, done the job, and they were a good side. They were the better team, and they done the job, but unlucky to Watford. At least they had a go, but Palace deserved to win, so...
Well, I'm a bit gutted. I thought we would score. But the longer it went on, the more I felt Phillips would get his nose in there.
Cheats?
Watford
are cheats.
Who says that?
Well, this is some of the feedback I've been getting from various people, including, let me read you a comment on Twitter. Ha ha ha, without cheating. Is cheating not the reason you are where you are? Non-league club. I think the argument is that because Watford were borrowing so many high-class Italian players, that some consider that to be cheating, Justin. What's your completely impartial, non-biased view about that?
You speak to most football fans and they think it's wrong. You know, I think anybody will go along with that, because I think yesterday in their, starting 11, I think they had 7 loan players. But then again, the owners of the club, they own different football clubs.
Can't do it next season, can they?
Well, it's going to be interesting to see what happens, because the rules are going to be changing. Quite how that will affect Watford, they'll probably just sign the players full-time, so that they won't effectively become loan players. But a lot of people do feel a bit upset about that. I think some of the comments as well go back to previous owners and whether Watford should have had points deductions for what was going on. But looking at the squad, they had the squad yesterday, but those players didn't perform on the day. Watford did the hard work getting to the playoff final, and they should have done a lot better, to be fair.
One question, Justin. Why were you laughing so much when you came in this morning? What was that about?
Well, I just thought to myself, it's good to be back in Luton this morning. I've had a long weekend away, and good to be back in Luton.
So nothing, just to confirm, nothing to do with Watford not getting promoted yesterday?
No, not at all.
Justin Dealey, thank you very much indeed. I appreciate your impartiality this morning. Well, if you were at the game yesterday, we'd love to hear from you. 08459 455 555. One person who made it to the game just was our reporter, Sophie Solaria. I say just... She forgot her ticket. I know. She forgot her husband dropped her off at the couple's house, or the family's house. She spent the day with the Watford family. We'll hear it in a second. And her husband said, "Oh, by the way, so if you got your ticket?" "Oh, I think it's in the other bag, Johnny." So her poor Johnny, her husband, had to drive back home, get her other bag, and then drive it back. Oh, they've only been married a few weeks. It won't last. Anyway, she did get to the match, and she spent the day with a family of Watford fans and followed them all the way to Wembley. And that was Sophie's mind unwinding at the end of it. 08459 455 555. If you went to the game yesterday, oh dear, do give us a call. Whatever side you're on, maybe you want to phone up and cry, or you're excited because your team won. It's Plan B. I don't know why it makes me laugh. Plan B and Professor Green, no, he's not a character in Cluedo, he's a pop singer. He's a pop singer, Professor Green. I don't know what he's done. He's one of those gentlemen that has 2 haircuts. It's kind of long on the top and then shaved at the sides. I don't know anybody who'd have a ridiculous haircut like that. Isn't he married to someone, Professor Green? His wife, probably. I'm trying to think who she is. Anyway, I don't know why I'm going off on a tangent trying to sound hip and cool. Let's be honest, there are no 16-year-olds listening to this show. Now, 75% of people living along the route of HS2, the high-speed railway, who apply for compensation, face being rejected. That's become clear from figures for those who've been successful so far along the route, which cuts through the Chilterns in Buckinghamshire. Well, in a moment, we'll hear from a Buckinghamshire man who says his family feel isolated and trapped, unable to sell their house or get compensation. But first, let's hear what the Rail Minister, Simon Burns, had to say on this programme recently when asked why so many claims are unsuccessful.
What we have brought in is an exceptional hardship scheme to help people who need to sell their houses now because of either a family tragedy, a breakdown of marriage, or they're having to move because their jobs have taken them elsewhere. And it is there to give help to people then. And what I would say to anyone who is caught in this situation, they should get in touch with High Speed 2.
That was Simon Burns on the show recently. I don't think he'll be coming back. He didn't enjoy it. Well, Adam called up to explain his circumstances. He uses a wheelchair and is now in the process of speaking to HS2 after his case was picked up on BBC's Newsnight.
I live just outside Great Missenden, and my house and my neighbour's house is 124 metres from the centre of the line. And my neighbour, who lost their job, they've applied 3 times and have been turned down 3 times. Because I'm a wheelchair user and disabled, I can't even afford to apply, because even if I got onto that scheme, I would be so far out of pocket because of my disability that I couldn't afford to move.
Well, Tom Crane is a director of the HS2 Action Alliance, and he says ministers like Simon Burns, well, they're just not listening.
Government ministers can't face, when they deal with HS2, speaking to real people about real problems. It's incredible to me that essentially he seems to say, if you get on Newsnight, you'll get fair compensation, but everybody else, you're on your own.
Well, on the line now is Chris Reynolds, who lives near the route of HS2 in Buckinghamshire and works in High Wycombe. Good morning, Chris.
Hello, Ian.
You nearly managed to sell your house. Tell me your story, Chris.
Yeah, we had our house on the market not very long at all, to be honest, and we got somebody local who knew about HS2, thought it was quite willing to buy a house if you want to stay in the area. It was all going through, and then not far from the end, her solicitor and lots of her friends were suggesting that she didn't buy the house because she might have trouble selling it when it's in 5 years' time, if and when this line gets constructed. Since then, we tried to sell it. Lots of people came from different areas. People coming out from London. We had sort of more local people. Everyone was saying, love the house, but not with HS2. So from there, we was on the market for 6 months, almost a year after that. And then we decided to apply for the exceptional hardship scheme.
So this is the compensation. How do you go about applying for that?
There's quite a lengthy form you have to fill in and supply quite a bit of evidence. There's sort of 3 or 4 main points that you need to prove why you need to move. You've got to prove that you've tried to sell your house and you can't because of HS2, and you've got to prove your distance from the line.
And what is your distance from the line?
We're out 300 yards from we'll say distance from the line. That's when it's underground.
Right.
But they're digging. It goes in a green tunnel. So basically, for those who don't know what a green tunnel is, basically they dig the cutting, build the tunnel, and then fill it back in.
Oh, it sounds like fun.
So we could have several years worth of rather major engineering works.
Were you successful with your claim for compensation?
No.
Oh.
We thought we were going to be quite successful.
Yeah.
We thought we sort of ticked most of the boxes. They came back to us and said we're not close enough to the entrance of the tunnel, which is the other edge of the village. So we thought, there's not much we can do about our position. We can't really change that. The other thing is they did say, we can see you've got a pressing need to move, but not an urgent need to move.
Oh, what's the difference?
Exactly, there doesn't seem to be sort of consistency. I mean, who decides what's fair and what's pressing and what's urgent?
Some people living near you have got compensation.
Yes, yeah. I know there are other houses in the village that are further away from the line and further away from the entrance to the tunnel that have been purchased.
And how does that make you feel?
Well, as I say, it just doesn't seem to be any consistency or fairness within the scheme. It seems that you've got different people looking at different applications. There's not one rule being applied across the board.
What do you do now, Chris?
Well, we are trapped really, unless the only other option for us is to rent the house out, but that means us having to have 2 rather large mortgages, and we need to get the equity out of this house to be able to move on. One of the reasons for one of our urgent needs, we had a couple, was the fact that expanding family. Their family has now expanded. So we're just trying to save like mad to try and get up enough money to get us a deposit for to try and move away from somewhere that's not blighted by something that's not that we've got no control of.
Chris, I appreciate you coming on this morning. What a mess. Chris Reynolds there, lives near the route of HS2, didn't get compensation. Is it affecting you?
Me no speak English.
And that's your latest news and sport. More from me at 7 o'clock.
Now that's what I call music.
Yes.
Is it? The Now compilations are celebrating 30 years of putting a load of old pap on 2 cassettes and selling it to idiots. I'm not a big fan. Now 62, is that the same as Now That's What I Call Music? Are they the same things?
They don't have the pig on them anymore, though, do they? The pig with the shades.
Oh, I remember the pig with the shades. He was up there with the Jive Bunny, as far as I was concerned, for musical excellence.
Exactly.
Now, I think it's mainly kind of a girls' thing, because I would like to buy the album by the artist, or sometimes I would come out of a shop clutching a 12-inch.
But if you never had a disappointing 12-inch, you buy the whole thing and you think, oh, why did I bother? This was the day before downloads, and sometimes you just want a little taster.
Was this the day before downloads?
I had Mel and Kim.
Did you?
I had the whole album. I should have just stuck with Now.
What was your... were you into the Nows? You were like a child of the late 70s, weren't you?
I used to get them for my birthday.
Oh...
to go with my stereo.
Why would anyone want to listen to something like Limahl?
Limahl had his fans.
Justin Dealey, I think, is kind of like the Limahl of BBC Three Counties Radio. He's got rubbish hair, he's orange, and he's a bit camp.
Well, Limahl and Pat Sharp rolled into one. If they could have reproduced, I don't know, by budding or something like that, then they would have had Justin.
Wait, them and the twins.
Across beds, hearts and bucks.
This is Iain Lee.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
The thing I noticed there is that Catherine Boyle's got a very, very filthy laugh, hasn't she? It's nasal. It's a nasally laugh. This is Iain Lee, BBC Three Counties Radio. In the next 30 minutes, we will be talking about those Now compilations. Were you a fan of them? It is mainly girls, isn't it, that bought those things? I think guys bought proper albums, and girls got the Now compilations. 08459 455 555, and we'll be hearing about what happened yesterday in terms of the EDL protest that took place in London.
On FM, AM, online and digital radio.
This is Iain Lee.
On BBC Three Counties Radio.
Across beds, hearts and bucks.
This is Iain Lee.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
08459 455 555. Supporters of the English Defence League marched through central London yesterday afternoon. We'll hear with an update. This is our political reporter, Paul Scoins. Paul, what happened?
Yes, Ian, around 1,000 demonstrators pushed their way through police cordons as they made their way to Trafalgar Square yesterday. They were chanting "Muslim killer off our streets." There's only one Lee Rigby in tribute to the soldier who was killed in Woolwich last week. The protesters held placards. The placards I saw said "Blood on your hands, GB RIP," and then they then marched through to Admiralty Arch and onto Parliament Square. The idea was to move towards Downing Street. At the same time, though, there was a smaller group of anti-fascist demonstrators gathered opposite them, holding EDL racists banners, and both sides then traded insults, but were kept apart by officers and barriers which had been set up.
I would imagine with these two separate groups that there was a big police presence.
Yes, they were escorted by a large Metropolitan Police presence with officers, vans. A force helicopter also followed overhead. A Scotland Yard spokesman said Whitehall was closed to traffic because of a number of demonstrations. The protesters made their way, as I say, along Whitehall before taking a position on the pavement across the road from Downing Street.
They were protesting, weren't they, about last week's tragic events where a soldier reportedly wearing a Help for Heroes charity T-shirt was killed. And the charity have been speaking about the EDL, haven't they?
Yes, that's right. They've refused to accept donations from the group. Tommy Robinson, who's the Luton-based leader of the EDL, started fundraising after the murder of soldier Lee Rigby last week, and a Help for Heroes spokesman said that fundraising page, which had been set up by Tommy Robinson, would be closed and no EDL donations would be accepted. And they said that because they don't accept donations from any political party, and though the EDL have said that they're not a political party, they're just a group of like-minded people, the charity does consider them to be a political party and therefore won't accept any donations from them.
What's been the political reaction?
Well, speaking after a protest on the day of the killing by the EDL, which spilled over into protesters throwing bottles at police, the former Home Secretary David Blunkett said that social media and rolling 24-hour news repeatedly showing these gruesome images that we've seen made it much more difficult to calm feelings and actually to ensure that rational debate took place and also prevent attitudes from hardening in the wake of the killing. And also, you know, he then said to prevent the kind of reaction we'd seen from the English Defence League, he said that the political climate was much worse than in 2005. They said they're living in a climate of very nasty and angry politics on issues like immigration, welfare at the moment, and he said it's building. He said that they need to be careful as politicians to make sure it doesn't tip over into something more dangerous. And back in March, Ian, the Home Office Minister James Brokenshire on this programme said that far-right extremism is a worrying phenomenon which poses a real threat to UK security. Minority said that 1 in 10 cases referred to a government radicalisation reduction scheme now concern the far right, and he condemned groups like the EDL for what he said were inflaming tensions with ethnic minorities.
The EDL Facebook, I'm just trying to see the update, because they, before the murder in Woolwich, I think they had something like 20, like I can see it now, they had 20,000 likers on Facebook. They've now got over 130,000 likers. So it's people are attracted to what they are saying.
And that's gone up 5,000 since yesterday.
Right.
So I mean, absolutely, they are growing in popularity, and their Twitter social network presence is growing as well. I mean, there is, for some people, it chimes with what they want to hear. It's a strong message from a group which does absolutely polarise opinion, and we will consider to look at them in the future.
We should mention as well that yesterday several war memorials in London were vandalised. I don't know if you've seen these pictures in some of the newspapers with the word Islam. So, and we don't know who's done that yet, which organisation has done that, but there is obviously strong feeling on both sides, and everyone just needs to calm down a little bit, because this could get much worse.
I think that's what the former Home Secretary was saying, really, is that with this sort of climate of extreme feelings, there are always going to be these sorts of instances, and it doesn't help. They say with the sort of general climate of these sorts of protests to ensure that rational debate takes place.
Paul Scoins, thank you very much indeed. 08459 455 555 is the telephone number if you want to give us a call. You can also go to facebook.com/BBC3CR, or you can send me a text. If you send me a text, do put your name on it, please, otherwise I won't read it out. 81333, start your text 3CR. Oh dear, I'm reading some of the comments posted on the English Defence League Facebook page, and there are people who are going on there to argue with them, and which is interesting, but here's one at random. Debbie Rothwell. Dearie me. Rather control them or all get out. She's speaking about Muslims, of course. You're right. They Muslims work in all kinds of jobs, but I'm sure we could happily find someone to replace them. Don't act the innocent. It's like playing Muslim roulette, finding the good from the bad. You're normal one day, the next killing and raping children. Enough is enough. Well, that's a fun Facebook page to be joining, isn't it? Wowzers. 08459 455 555. Now, police say the key to finding out who killed a 20-year-old man in Luton lies within the community. They're appealing for help in tracing 3 people in relation to the stabbing which happened in Thrales Close late on Sunday night. Well, our reporter, Justin Dealey, has been to Marsh Farm. Is that correct, Justin?
Absolutely, Ian, yes.
You're not there now. Whereabouts are you?
Just round the corner from Marsh Farm. I mean, officers were called to a property in Thrales Close in Marsh Farm at around 8:15 on Sunday evening after they received reports that somebody had been stabbed. The firearms units attended the property where the victim was found with serious injuries. He was rushed to the L&D hospital but was pronounced dead shortly afterwards. So, as you mentioned there, the police are now appealing for witnesses. Local people have the key to solving this crime. This is DCI Steve Collin. He's from the Bedfordshire, Hertfordshire and Cambridgeshire Major Crimes Unit.
So I'm looking for a group of 3 people that were caught on CCTV in the Thrales Close, Purley Centre area of Marsh Farm on Sunday. They are a black male on a bike, a black male with a dog on a lead, and significantly a younger girl, probably a teenager, white female teenager, with long dyed hair, which is in a ponytail.
And what have people told you this morning, Justin?
I mean, the timing of this, obviously, is tragic, but the timing as well on Sunday. We were talking on Friday, Ian, weren't we, about the carnival? And a lot of people were saying to me they weren't going to be going to the carnival because they didn't feel safe. So many stabbings and so many shootings in Luton this year. But
figures down significantly on the carnival. I believe they were expecting 50,000. I've heard it was something like 5,000. We'll certainly investigate that this week. But this wasn't connected to the carnival, was it? That went relatively smoothly.
It wasn't connected at all. I mean, you talk to anybody who was there on Sunday for the carnival, everyone was on a real high. It was a fabulous day. The weather was fantastic. It was colourful. It was noisy. It was everything that you'd expect from a carnival. And then later that evening at 8:15, we hear about another fatal stabbing. So clearly people very upset. I've been talking to people in Marsh Farm this morning, and this is what they had to say.
Well, my thoughts is it's just going to carry on. My reaction is that it's another young life. You know what I'm saying? Like,
when you were fairly near to where this stabbing happened over the weekend, do you think people are seriously going to come forward with information? Because that's what the police want. Do you think people will do that, or will they be too scared?
People were scared to come to the police because that's just how it's always been. People don't want to be called a grass or a snitch, so people ain't going to come forward. Like.
And do you think the stabbings and the shootings will continue?
Yeah.
Is there any hope for Marsh Farm?
It's not even just Marsh Farm. Like, there's a couple of places in Luton that everyone will come together. It's just gangs in it. They just want to stab each other.
You're a young lad. Are you keen to leave this area for essentially a better life?
Yeah. See, I was looking at this place in New Zealand. I work on construction sites, so New Zealand is my option out of Luton.
So what's your reaction to what's happened over the weekend at Marsh Farm?
I think it's bad, and I think the government or the elders should sit down with the people at Marsh Farm and have a conversation with them to find out what actually is happening there. Yeah.
Do you think the Marsh Farm can recover?
It can recover if they all become one unity.
And a final word with yourself, madam. Can we have your reaction to what's happened at Marsh Farm over the weekend?
Just a complete shock, really. But then at the same time as well, so many little things have been happening. We've been hearing that it's a group of small little gangs, and we don't know exactly where they're coming from because, you know, sometimes I find Luton to be quite quiet. So when I hear about these on the news, it kind of shocks me because, you know, I could go through the town and there's absolutely nothing. So this whole thing's been quite a shock. And they're all so young. And that's the big problem. But I don't think there's enough for them to do around here. You know, I can't remember the last time I did something as a youth in Luton. And so I spend most of my time in London. But there's nothing to do in the area. I don't think there's any opportunities for the young kids. So I think it's a bit of a shame. They need something to do, and there is nothing in this town. And I don't think any of the officials are doing anything about it either. So I feel like they've been abandoned, and they're just grouping up in these little gangs, and it's getting really silly and really dangerous.
The thing is, Justin, what do these kids want to do? I remember in the 70s and the 80s, it was always people saying, oh, we need more youth centres. We need more youth centres. But young people don't want to go. The kind of people that go to youth centres are the kind of people that are happy to play ping pong and whatever. They're not the people that are going around stabbing each other.
But at least you've got to give these kids the option, surely. I mean, if you talk to any youngster in Luton, and again, recently I've spoken to many of them, and they said to me, I've had the chance to go and join these gangs, and if I was going to be in these gangs, I would be given a knife, I would be given a gun, and I would be told how to use that. Now, they haven't chosen that option because they want to go on and have a successful life. But if you have got a youngster who's growing up within that environment and they take that route, unfortunately, there's not a lot you can do about it. You've got to give these kids something to do. Everyone that I says in Luton, there is nothing for them to do. But I think the bigger question for the police is, are people going to come forward? We've recently spoken about a reward of £1,000. Now, we're talking about a very, very small fee there of £1,000 in relation to gun crime. But with this, they are hoping that people will come forward. Well, and you've heard that from the young lad. People
don't want to snitch. No, of course not. They're not going to snitch because they don't want to be seen as a grass, and also they're worried that their mums or their kids are going to get a stabbing as well.
It's all very well the police saying, you know, the local community, they have the power to solve these crimes, but people are going to feel that by doing that, it's not safe.
It's a mess, isn't it?
It is, and something's got to happen, and quickly, because this situation cannot carry on for the people of Luton.
Justin Daly, thank you very much indeed. 08459 455 555. If you want to have your say on that, and yeah, we're going to look into the Luton Carnival figures this week, I think, because they were expecting 50,000. I've heard it was as low as 5,000. I don't know if that's accurate, and I'm just putting that out there. I heard that from a BBC Look East reporter. If you were there, keen to get your stories. Also, if you were at the Watford Crystal Palace game yesterday, oh dear, we had such high hopes, didn't we? Luke Ashmead, one of the sports gentlemen, I think that's the correct term, was in the studio yesterday going, yeah, it'll be easy, be fine, piece of cake. They'll win on paper. We spoke to John Mooney yesterday. He's coming on in about 5-10 minutes. Who does the Watford podcast? I'll be fine. Yeah, no, we'll do this. Oh dear, how gutted must you feel? And let's be honest, if you're a Crystal Palace fan and you want to gloat, you're more than welcome. Thank you, Catherine. 3 minutes past 7, it's Tuesday, it's miserable out there, it really is. So I couldn't believe I stepped out of my house and it was raining. Well, that was some, I hope you enjoyed it. Welcome to autumn. Maybe we'll skip autumn and go straight to winter. Lots coming up in the next hour of the show, including disappointing day yesterday for some people. We'll be speaking to a Watford fan to find out how he's feeling after yesterday's crushing defeat. By the way, if you're a Crystal Palace fan and you want to call in and gloat, I mean, you're allowed to. 75% of people living along the route of HS2, the high-speed railway, who apply for compensation face being rejected. Are you one of them? And those now music compilations are 30 years old. What are your memories of them? Did you ever buy them? Can we find a bloke that bought them? I think it's primarily a girls' thing, wasn't it? Men wanted the 12 inches and the albums, and girls who just liked Limahl or the Backstreet Boys or Jason Donovan would buy the Now compilations, wouldn't they? Facebook.com/BBC 3CR. You can send in a text, 81333. Start your text 3CR, or you can give me a call, 08459 455 555.
Across beds, hearts and bucks.
This is BBC Three Counties Radio.
Well, it was billed as the richest game in football. It ended in disappointment for Watford. Watford lost 1-0 to Crystal Palace in the playoff final at Wembley yesterday afternoon. Palace were awarded a penalty in extra time. Ex-Watford player Kevin Phillips took it and scored with 15 minutes to go. The Horns were unable to equalise in the remaining time, sending Crystal Palace back up to the Premier League for the first time in 8 years. Joined by two people now. We've got Mayor of Watford, Dorothy Thornhill. Good morning, Dorothy.
Good morning.
And also joining me is John Moody, who is John Mooney, one of the presenters of the Watford Supporters podcast from the Rookery End. John, we'll start with you. We spoke to you yesterday.
Yeah.
You were nervous. You were full of optimism. You thought you could do this.
I did, and I think I said to you, Ian, that if the Watford team, who we knew we had seen this year, that was brilliant, could play passing football, if they played their game, we would easily win that game. But they didn't turn up, and it just wasn't what we expected. And really, Crystal Palace deserves to win it across the 120 minutes. They took a penalty to sort of beat us, I suppose.
Penalty by an old man as well.
Yeah, but he's a very good footballer.
Right.
And it's all like, we picked him out of obscurity in the mid-90s. But it was just, they just didn't turn up, and it wasn't great fun.
At what point, John, did you think, hang on a second, this isn't going to be quite as promising as I was expecting it to be?
Oh, quite early on.
Right.
I think we had like 5 and 10 minute little spells throughout the game, and that was almost like once we had about the third one of those being the second half, and nothing sort of came from it. And then all of a sudden it was Palace again. They're one of their wingers, Wilfred Zaha, the bloke who's Man United have signed. Everything was just, they were attacking, and you're going, I can't see how we're going to score a goal. So I think that's the thing that sometimes football fans do. You sort of go, yeah, we're not going to win this. No, I'm starting to protect myself here. So I'm not going to think we're going to win this, and we could possibly win this, because I think it'll just destroy me even further.
Was it the fault of one of your mates? Who was the chap who there was a chap who was going to go that shouldn't have been there, wasn't there?
Well, it was Jason, but then Curtis, I told you about Curtis from Denver, who never seen Watford lose.
Yep.
And technically he's never seen Watford lose within 90 minutes still, was the little thing.
Yeah.
But the way I see it, Ian, is that, yes, we didn't get £120 million, but what fans don't have to pay extortionate prices for tickets to away games. We're not going to have our kick-off is going to be at 5 o'clock and then at 12 o'clock, and then on a Sunday and a Monday. We know it's going to be fine. You said you were after Crystal Palace fans to come and gloat. At the tube station, just like we stayed a little bit later and went to a bar near Wembley. As we came out, this young 14-year-old comes up to me and says, Yeovil. And I went, what do you mean? He goes, you're going to be playing Yeovil. I went, yeah, you're going to be playing Manchester United, and you're going to lose. We're going to beat Yeovil.
John, I think I just heard one of those straws you're desperately clutching at fall to the floor there. Bend down and pick up. The Mayor Dorothy Thornhill, you were there yesterday. I saw your tweets. What did you make of the whole event?
Oh, it was awful, wasn't it? I mean, we never really... the crowd were affected. It was just too nervous and tentative from the start. For both teams, to be fair. And I agree with John there. I don't think there'd be any gloating from Palace. They're not true fans in that sense. but it was just too nervous, too tentative for too long, and we never really looked like scoring. I mean, I went with my son, who is an absolute avid fan and a master tactician. You know, he was groaning at who was selected and who wasn't subbed, and the formation we were playing. But the bottom line is we just never looked like scoring a goal.
They've achieved a lot this season, haven't they, Dorothy?
Oh, to be honest, I mean, that's what we have to cling on to. 12 months ago, we were facing bankruptcy, you know, who was going to be owning us, the possibility of points deduction and everything like that. You know, we are now in the hands of decent owners, good management, and they're with Watford for the long haul. And if you look at what they've done to their other clubs, I think they will do us proud. And we've got to remember, you know, this is a team that have come from nowhere and have taken us to Wembley. I still think, you know, you come third with several points, ahead, and you have to go through the playoffs. That seems a bit unfair, but that is the system that we've got, and we've got to cling on to that. And you know, as a famous quote, tomorrow's another day, and there's another season ahead of us.
What are your predictions for next year, Dorothy? I guess it's too early to look forward, but they do have a strong team.
Well, I think as I say, the new owners were quite clear it was a 2-year project. That was in their mind, and in a sense, this was a bonus. I think for us fans watching week in, week out, we could have had it earlier in the season. It's been a roller coaster of a season for us, but I think it is there, and I think hopefully they will strengthen the squad, and we can go on from here because it is a real prize to be had.
John, is it a strong enough team to succeed next year, or was this their chance and they blew it?
Oh no, we've got something to build on. That's the good thing. Mr. Zola has a nice core to build on. He still needs more from it. We're not going to have one of the players, Nathaniel Chalobah, because he'll go back to Chelsea. But no, I think it is something to go on. I was chatting to another international on it yesterday, and he said, what was the best thing about this year? And he said that there is another year. And there's a lot of football fans and many clubs out there who are constantly fearing that there might not be another season because their football club's going to go out of business. But we know we do, and we know it's going to be in the Championship, and we know this season has been far, far beyond our wildest dreams, John, and we can sort of go from there.
John and Dorothy, stay there. Irene's in Milton Keynes. Irene, I believe you've called in to commiserate John and Dorothy for their loss.
I do feel sorry for them, but I am pleased in otherwise.
Oh, why are you pleased, Irene?
Because I do support Crystal Palace. I used to live there. And I do support the underdogs sometimes because I do think that they don't have the money that a lot of the bigger teams do have. So when they do win, I think it's good to them.
Oh, Irene, this is awkward. We've got John Mooney does the Watford podcast and the Mayor of Watford on the line, and you're saying you're glad Crystal Palace won.
Well, I feel sorry for them. I don't understand. I do feel sorry for them, but they are more a financial team. Crystal Palace do have to struggle.
Okay. Well, Irene, listen.
I know that they're a good team. They have been to Wembley before.
Okay, Irene, thank you very much. Mayor Dorothy, what are you doing today to commiserate? Are you throwing yourself back into work to try and get over the defeat?
Absolutely, I'm afraid, yes. Yeah, back to work on a miserable grey day.
It's horrible, isn't it?
Suits our mood, but
Dorothy, thank you very much indeed. Nice to talk to you. And John, what are you going to do to commiserate today?
I think I'm going to do some DIY because I'm on half term because I'm a teacher, so it's going to be productive. And then I've got a bit of podcast together as well at some point, which will be quite hard.
I might listen to it. Listen, I'm completely impartial. I'm not a massive football fan, but I am enjoying Daly waltzing in this morning, virtually doing a tap dance as a Luton fan, and you're. I'm laughing at your tears, John. That's really inappropriate. I'm very sorry.
I didn't cry. Ian.
John, thank you very much indeed. If you want to hear John's podcast, it's From the Rookery End. You can get it on iTunes, unlike my podcast, which you can't get on iTunes because the BBC, what's wrong with you? There is a podcast of this show. If you want to listen to it, go to the BBC podcast page. We'll put the link on Facebook and tweet it. You can listen to it and download it from there. You can't find it on iTunes. If you go on iTunes and type in my name, and BBC or Three Counties, it doesn't come up because the boffins at the BBC they've got to tick a computer box or something. John's just a bloke, right, who's doing DIY. His podcast is available on iTunes. I'm working for one of the biggest corporations in the world, and we can't get it right. How naughty. I'll post the link on the Facebook page a little bit later on. Carleen Street on Facebook says, I was not there for the football yesterday, but I watched the footage. I have to say we were outplayed from the start. That seems to be the opinion, doesn't it? That's what John was saying. And Brian Anley says, the perfect result on a sunny bank holiday. Come on, your horns. I think that's a slight misphrasing of the of what should be said. 08459 455 555 is the phone number. Were you there yesterday? And we will take calls from both sides. I am impartial. I tell you what, can we get... This is what I want. Can we get a Crystal Palace fan and a Watford fan on the line at the same time? And I want the Crystal Palace fan to shake hands on air with the Watford fan and offer them commiserations, and the Watford fan say, well done, you deserved it. Can we get that? Can we make... If we can't get peace in the streets of Luton, can we not at least try and get peace between Watford and Crystal Palace? I want a Crystal Palace fan and I want a Watford fan.
Every weekday morning from 9.
The JVS Show.
With the biggest questions.
Today on the Big Phone-In, I'm asking, would you support some dog breeds being removed from this country? Should traffic wardens be more lenient? Would the government be right to drop the minimum price for alcohol?
And the biggest opinions.
I think the tax is completely unfair.
It doesn't matter how old they are or how young they are. They're still your children.
It doesn't matter whether it's male or female or what. I'm disgusted with the people. You should have cut them people off.
The JVS Show.
Weekdays from 9.
On BBC Three Counties Radio.
You should have cut them people off. I don't know what you're talking about there. But JVS is back after having a lovely day off yesterday, and no doubt we'll be hearing about his barbecue that I'm guessing he probably had. 75% of people living along the route of HS2, the high-speed railway, who apply for compensation face being rejected. That's become clear from figures for those who've been successful so far along the route, which cuts through the Chilterns in Buckinghamshire. Well, Pamela Horlock from the village of Twyford in Bucks was turned down for compensation because she couldn't prove her exceptional hardship. Our reporter Simon Watts went to meet her.
My name's Pam Horlock and I live in the village of Twyford in Buckinghamshire. I put my house on the market just before, in the late autumn of the year before HS2 was announced. And there was quite a bit of interest in the property. And then when HS2 was announced in the spring, that was it. There was hardly anybody wanted to come and look at it because they were afraid of the effect on the price and the value.
Not surprisingly, people are going to be put off. For you, though, they left you in a very isolated position.
Oh, absolutely. I'm a widow. And I had a small mortgage that I needed to pay off, and I couldn't sell my house. I was heating a big house, which I couldn't really afford to do. It's almost as if the government just didn't care. They were building this railway, and tough if anybody gets in the way.
You've gone through the process of trying to get compensation. It's been an unsuccessful process, like it has been for many people. What's happened with you?
Well, I applied for compensation. We sent all the details off and all the information off and had it back saying, first of all, I wasn't close enough. And secondly, this was done at the beginning of 2012. I explained that my mortgage would run out in 2013. I'd have to pay my mortgage up in 2013. And they basically said to me, it's not 2013 yet.
What were the options for you then?
There weren't any.
There was a happy ending afterwards, but only through the fact that by pure luck, by pure chance, if you like, you were able to do a house swap.
Yes, my estate agent was very good on this. He was preparing to resubmit again for the second time. He came up with this scenario. He said, there is a house in the village, a 3-bedroom semi, and I want you to come and have a look at it. Now, if you don't want to do a part exchange on it, please say so, and we'll put the application through again. And came and looked at it, and my son looked at it as well, and we decided to go ahead with it. So we managed to do a part exchange with a young family in the village.
So that's worked out well for you, but it's more, I guess, the principle of this, because had you not been helped out by people in the village, by your family, you'd still be stuck there now.
Absolutely, and I just wouldn't be able to afford that. I wouldn't have been able to afford to heat the house this past winter because I know a lot of people have had problems and I wouldn't have been able to do it either. And I do have rheumatoid arthritis, which doesn't help. And I just would be despairing, I think.
There are many people as well in this situation where on a daily basis we're hearing of their compensation, their attempts to get compensation being turned down. How do you feel towards the government and towards the whole HS2 project?
I feel about HS2 the government have decided they're going to do it and they're going to go roughshod over everybody, and I almost feel it's a bit like a communist state. I'm sorry, you're going to have to move that. We're going to do it here whether you like it or not. And I always thought we lived in a democracy, and they're just not listening to any of it.
Well, on the line now is Helen German from HS2 Limited, who's the Exceptional Hardship Scheme Manager for the company. It's a communist state, Helen, and you're riding roughshod over people. What's your reaction to that?
Hello, good morning, Ian. Hi. Well, the Exceptional Hardship Scheme that the lady you've just been talking to applied to is very much just an interim scheme at the first stage of the High Speed 2 project. We're not at the point yet where we can implement much wider ranging and longer term compensation schemes. The first thing I just want to explain is this is not it. This is just a very initial scheme that has been brought in addition to what's legally required in this country, and most other infrastructure projects do not have something like this. So we're not by any means saying that this is the only compensation that will ever be on offer.
But people don't seem to know that, though, and if they don't know that, then surely there's a failure somewhere, isn't there?
Well, the people who apply to the scheme do know that. It's made very, very clear in the application form and in all of our communication with those people. But I do understand that, it is difficult for people to get their head around. There's a lot of information out there about High Speed 2. There's a lot of media about High Speed 2, and it can be confusing. But just to be absolutely clear, for example, people who live very close to the line, whose properties will need to be compulsorily purchased, for example, in the future, will receive full statutory compensation, and they won't need to apply to a discretionary scheme. They'll receive what they're entitled to under the law of this country. So we're not doing things differently to other infrastructure projects. We're in fact doing more than we would usually than the government would usually do.
But that doesn't. And I appreciate what you're saying, that you're doing more. But the people who believe they are entitled to this compensation specifically and aren't getting it, that doesn't help them, does it? We're going to be speaking to a chap later on who had a 2-year battle to get compensation. He applied for exceptional hardship. It was rejected. Over 2 years, he spent £50,000, and then ultimately it was accepted. It's not a fair system, is it?
The way that the scheme works is because we're spending taxpayers' money buying people's properties that are not needed for the construction of the line. As I said, this is not about that people will compulsorily purchase. The scheme has to rely on hard evidence of an urgent need to sell and that it's High Speed 2 that's the reason why people can't sell. We must be very, very careful that people provide us with good documentary evidence, and the scheme allows people to reapply and to respond to the reasons why they were not turned down the first time. And if someone had to reapply and was eventually accepted, that's right, and that shows the scheme is working.
At the cost of £50,000?
I can't comment on how much money he spent on putting together his application, of course not. But the scheme...
But that would imply that the scheme isn't working if people are spending that much money.
I don't really understand why it would cost that much. I'm sure, I'm not saying it's not true, but it doesn't cost any money to apply to the scheme. So let's just be clear that the evidence is required, and if it took a few times of application for him to be able to prove that, it shows the scheme is working, because at the end of the day, it's your money and my money and taxpayers' money that is buying these properties, and we wouldn't want to just be accepting every application regardless of the reasons that people put forward.
We spoke to Chris earlier on, and he said he was told he didn't have an urgent need, but EHS recognised he had a pressing need, and he couldn't sell his house because of HS2, and yet he didn't get compensation.
Well, I don't know which case you're talking about. Obviously.
It's Chris Reynolds. And he was told that he had a pressing but not an urgent need, and he had buyers pull out of buying his house when they discovered it was near HS2.
Okay, well, I really wouldn't be appropriate for me to comment on an individual case on air. The main thing is that the scheme is working.
But it's not working for people like Chris, is it?
It might not be working for that individual person
So
in
it's
terms
not-
of his application. However, we've had 113 people have been successful into the scheme.
Out of how many
which means
applicants?
We've purchased, we've completed on 81 purchases to date. That's spending over £50 million worth of tax.
Out of how many applications?
We've had over 450 individual applications, but some of those are repeat applications, so it's not that number of households. But by its nature, it's an exceptional hardship scheme. It's there to deal with those people who are adversely affected at this stage of the project.
So let's go through this. How many applications do you have? 415, did you say?
We've had over 450 applications.
450. And how many of those have been successful?
To date, 113 have been successful.
It's not brilliant odds, is it? There are 340 people who are feeling as though they're not being listened to, and they are being ridden over roughshod.
As I've said, a lot of those 450 might be reapplications.
OK, let's say 350. Let's be generous and say 350 people, 350 families are feeling that their need is urgent and it's not being recognised.
What we have to remember is that for this very important piece of infrastructure, we accept that there are people adversely affected by it. This scheme is here, which is in addition to what's required by law in terms of compensation, and people can apply to it from anywhere. There is no geographical restriction that we have placed on the scheme for people to apply. We have to be very, very careful and apply some quite strict criteria to make sure that the houses that we're buying are people in genuine situations of exceptional hardship with a genuine urgent need to sell because of high speed 2. There will inevitably be people who apply who do not get accepted. We would never be expecting a very high percentage acceptance rate under a scheme such as this.
Over 300 does seem a lot of rejections. Are you saying that they're all swinging the lead a little bit?
No, absolutely not all people. And as I said, the reapplication process, taking into account why people are turned down the first time, it works, and it shows that, and a lot of people are actually accepted on their second application or even their third application. So the process does work. But as I said, we're spending taxpayers' money. We have to make sure there is a good balance between what the houses that we're buying and versus the amount of money that we're spending, because buying someone's house, it's not a small amount of money, especially in this part of the country. And as a responsible government, High Speed 2 Limited and Department for Transport are making very sure that we are not accepting people who can't prove that they're in exceptional hardship. I'm not saying that they're not, but they need to prove to us using proper documentary evidence, and that's what a lot of the issues are based around that people have when they're maybe not successful the first time around. So it really is important that people provide the evidence to us.
Helen,
ultimately, as I said, that this is an interim scheme. People more closely affected by the scheme will receive the full statutory compensation going forward.
Helen, we're running out of time. Final question: is the exceptional hardship scheme fair?
Well, it's my job to run it, and I think we're being as fair and as helpful to people as we possibly can be.
Helen German from HS2 Limited, thank you very much indeed. Well, do you think it's fair? Have you put in an application? Do you agree with what Helen was saying? She's right, it's taxpayers' money. I don't mind my tax going on sorting out poor families that are going to have a train line built right next to them, to be honest. I don't mind that. That's a good thing to spend money on, isn't it? Making people's lives a little bit better. What do you think? Do you agree with Helen? It sounds all fair and legit, or have you tried to make an application and struggled?
Across beds, hearts and bucks.
This is Iain Lee.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
Morning, this is Iain Lee, BBC Three Counties Radio. Lots to talk about between now and 8 o'clock. Do give us a call, 08459 455 555 is the telephone number. We will be taking your calls on those Now compilations. I'm sure only girls bought those. Boys wanted to get their hands on a 12-inch or the actual album. Girls wanted a compilation. I'm sure. You give us your memories. And this morning we are trying to find, if we can't create peace on the streets of Luton, we're going to create peace on the airwaves. I want someone from Watford, a Watford fan, and a Crystal Palace fan to phone up and commiserate and congratulate each other. Hands across the airwaves. I think we can do that. With a little bit of peace. Now, supporters of the English Defence League marched through central London yesterday. Here with more of that is our political reporter Paul Scoynes. Paul, what happened yesterday?
Yes, Ian, it was around 1,000 demonstrators who were walking through the streets of London. They were chanting things like "Muslim killers off our streets, there's only one Lee Rigby," and of course this was all because of the sad and tragic death of the soldier killed in Woolwich last Wednesday. They held placards reading "Blood on your hands, GB, RIP." They marched through Admiralty Arch and onto Parliament Square with the sort of aim of going towards Downing Street eventually, but a much smaller group of anti-fascist demonstrators also gathered opposite them, and they were holding sort of anti-EDL banners. EDL racist was one. Both sides, however, traded insults, and they were kept apart by a sizable police presence.
I was going to say, I would imagine that a lot of police would have been there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they were escorted by the police, Metropolitan Police, in officers' vans. There was a force helicopter hovering overhead as well. And a Scotland Yard spokesman yesterday said that Whitehall was closed because of a number of demonstrations. The protesters, as I say, then made their way along Whitehall before taking up a position outside Downing Street, where, of course, David Cameron wasn't there because he was on holiday.
He was on holiday in Ibiza. Chillaxing, I believe, is the phrase that was in a lot of the papers this weekend. They were protesting, weren't they, about the murder of the soldier last week who was reportedly wearing a Help for Heroes charity T-shirt. And Help for Heroes, I noticed, were on Twitter and a few other sites yesterday talking about the EDL. What were they saying?
Well, they were very quick to say that they were refusing any donations from a page which had been set up by the Luton-based leader of the English Defence League, Tommy Robinson, last week as a reaction to
raise money for Help for Heroes.
To raise money for them, absolutely. And their reasoning was that they would not accept donations from any political party. That was a blanket rule that the charity had. They say it's not a political organisation, it is an organisation specifically to help soldiers, and they do not want to get involved in politics of any kind, be it from a sort of an organised political party, if you like, or a group such as the English Defence League.
There's also been a political reaction, hasn't there?
Yeah, that's right. Just speaking in the days after the killing of Lee Rigby, where that day we'd seen protests in Woolwich from the English Defence League, where around 100 protesters turned up and some hurled bottles at police. David Blunkett had said that this was inevitable in the light of the sort of graphic images and the constant sort of coverage by the media of this killing, and it was doing nothing to calm feelings, he said, or to ensure rational debate, and said it would absolutely produce the sort of reaction we'd seen from the English Defence League. He said that the climate today was worse in the wake of this than the wake of the 7/7 bombings in 2005. He said that we're living in a climate of very nasty and angry politics on issues like immigration and welfare, and he said that we have to be very careful that this doesn't tip over into something more dangerous. And back in March on this programme, Ian, the Home Office Minister James Brokenshire said that far right-wing extremism is a very worrying phenomenon. He condemned groups like the English Defence League for what he said were inflaming tensions within ethnic minorities. And if you look in some of the papers today, there's some very sort of tragic pictures as well in the Mail on the early pages of war memorials
on the front page of the Express.
Yes, and also, but there's a counterpoint to that. There's lots of protesters and supporters and people sort of paying respects to the flowers and the tributes in Woolwich just after only a few days from all religions praying and showing solidarity against any sort of extremism of any kind. So a real mix of reactions in the papers today.
So you can hear me shuffling the papers. The reason I'm doing it is because I wanted to look at the picture of the protesters, the English Defence League protesters. Not so much yesterday, although I can see two in this photograph, more in the protest in Woolwich. Why do they hide their faces? If they are so proud of the views that they hold and they are defending this country, why do they hide their faces?
Yes, there were some pictures in the certainly in the demonstration at Woolwich of English Defence League balaclavas and men wearing those at the
There's
rally.
A couple here with the flag of St George covering their faces.
Yes, that's a great
So you not
question.
think if you're proud of your views, as these gentlemen obviously are, and several of them in this are, they're proud of their views and they are proud of this country and proud of what they are doing in defending this country for me, although I didn't ask them to. It just seems odd that you would cover your face.
I mean, we should add as well, I suppose, that the popularity of the group's Facebook page has dramatically risen in the last week. It was before the attacks had taken place on Wednesday. Was around 20,000 likes, if you like, and that's risen, I think, to 130,000.
I've been on there today. Some of those people that are liking are there to argue with the English Defence League. Can I just say, if you're arguing on the internet, you're already a loser. You can't win an argument on the internet. So there are some people there arguing, but there are some people displaying what I would describe as quite extreme racist views. A couple of the comments I picked out at random. That's not saying that's the English Defence League saying that, but certainly some of the people who are liking that page are saying those things.
Yeah, and we've seen it from all sides, haven't we? There have been some extreme views from
of course there have, yes,
various positions. I think it's interesting politically because the government has talked about prescribing certain groups, banning them from radical Islamist groups to far right-wing groups. Theresa May has been talking about looking at introducing new legislation that would make these sorts of groups illegal, and that is very controversial because once you start going down that path, then who draws the line? It becomes very difficult to make that judgment, and sometimes politicians wade into those situations when perhaps they don't feel comfortable doing it.
Do you remember there was that bizarre situation in the 80s where the IRA were allowed on television, but they had to have their voices... So you could see them saying what they were saying, but their voices were dubbed by an actor. Stephen Ray, it turns out, the famous actor, would say what they were saying. I never quite got the point of that.
Well, there was the decision of the government at the time that the IRA couldn't have the sort of a direct line to the audience, if you like. It was about giving oxygen of publicity, I think was the phrase that was always being used. But absolutely, and that seemed to stop it after, I think it was in the run-up to the Good Friday Agreement, wasn't it? I think when they stopped that. But clearly, I mean, EDL will say they're not a terrorist organisation, but and no evidence to show that, of course. But other groups certainly who have been convicted, they are now able to speak, and we've seen that, since it's different times, perhaps.
Paul Scoins, thank you very much indeed. 08459 455 555 if you want to have your say about that or any of the things we're talking about.
Call 08459 455 555.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
Now, can we do something a little bit lighter, please? It's been a bit heavy. Yes, we can. The UK's biggest and longest-selling music compilation album is celebrating its 30th anniversary. I remember when they first came out. Oh, I remember when they first came out. Here are some of the tracks that, that were on the very first That's What I Call Music in 1983. So there we go, some of the tracks that made the first That's What I Call Music in 1983. Casey and the Sunshine Band, excellent. Culture Club, excellent. UB40, oh my, weren't they awful? That bland white reggae, just so bland. And then Ali Campbell left, so his brother joined them as the singer, and now they're all bankrupt. So there is some karmic justice in the world. I wouldn't want to wish it on anyone apart from UB40. Bonnie Tyler, and followed by Paul Scoins there. Some of the tracks from Now That's What I Call Music in 1983. Do you still collect these? I'm guessing they're still popular, these compilations. It's probably what? All Robbie Williams and Lana Del Rey. Yeah, that's right. I know a pop star, Lady Gaga. It's all those people on there, isn't it? I'd imagine. Can we find a gentleman who bought these cassettes or compact discs or music downloads now, MP3s? Can we find... I'm sure it's just girls that bought those things. Blokes were into albums and album tracks and making their own compilations to try and impress girls. Do you remember doing that? Boys, making your own mixtapes for girls. And then, if you were a little bit advanced, like I was, you'd put in, like, little bits of comedy, or, like, demo versions, or, like, bootlegs that you had. You know, a little bit, just to show you're a bit clever. A little bit artsy-fartsy. What are your memories of the, Now That's What I Call Music compilations? 08459 455 555. I'm sure it's just a girl thing. It must be, because girls like singles, boys like album cuts, deep cuts. Gonna play some deep cuts from the album, some B-sides, some rare demos and some live tapes. 08459 455 555. You can also go to facebook.com/BBC3CR, or you can send me a text, 81333. Start your text 3CR. There, the flipper travel. Excellent. So, thank you. Now, That's What I Call Music is 30 years old. A girl's product, if ever there was one. No gentleman bought it. Stephen, in Bedford, you never bought a Now, did you?
Oh, I did indeed. I mean, Soldier, keep calling me a girl.
It would appear you're displaying all the attributes of a lady. Which one did you buy? Do you remember?
First, second, third, fourth, I don't know, loads of them.
Blimey. Did you buy it on cassette or vinyl?
Cassette, I think, because they were just easy to listen to in the car.
Yeah, those big chunky 2-pack cassettes. Not 2-pack as in the rap artist, 2-packs as in it contained 2 cassettes. What was the appeal of them, Stephen?
You just had to just stick it on and then just listen to it, and you didn't have to worry about keep changing things, and there was a variety. Mind you, they always used to put on some good stuff. They used to put some real tat in the middle of it somewhere.
That was the thing, wasn't it? They would. You'd get the hits. You'd be top and tail with the hits, but then there would be a load of old guff in the middle of it. Look, I'm trying to find now. I'm going to find the first album. That's What I Call Music. Let's try and find the artists on the first album, and let's see. Here we go. Right, let's find out who's on it. So, Phil Collins, You Can't Hurry Love, cracking song.
Yeah.
Duran Duran, Is There Something I Should Know? Not bad.
That's okay.
UB40 Red Red Wine. The standard's dipping already by track 3. Limahl, Only for Love.
Oh dear me.
Oh, Malcolm McLaren, Double Dutch.
Well, that's not a bad.
That was a good song. That was a good song. Men Without Hats, The Safety Dance. Haven't got a clue what that is. Rocksteady Crew. That was good. There's New Edition, Human League, Howard Jones. The first one. It's not that bad.
Go to the next CD, that's where it falls right down.
But what on the second, on That's What I Call Music 2?
No, wasn't there 2 CDs in
there was. There's 2 UB40 tracks on there, so that's no good. Will Powers, Kissing with Confidence, you remember that?
Oh, yeah, I do.
Oh, that was awful. Simple Minds, Waterfront, Madness, The Sun and the Rain, never even heard of that. Culture Club, Victims, never heard of that. Well, it was a mixed bag, wasn't it, Stephen?
It certainly was.
OK, listen, thank you very much. It's Stephen the Milkman in Bedford. He bought them. Will Powers' Kissing with Confidence was an awful record. I couldn't even begin to sing it to you. If someone can phone up and either play a bit of that down the phone or sing Kissing with Confidence, it was kind of like an American transvestite sort of talking, wasn't it? Isn't that what that song was? And look, there are 2 UB40 songs on the very first Now That's What I Call Music. Hurrah for UB40. 08459 455 555 is the telephone number. If you want to give me a call, you can go to facebook.com/BBC3CR, or you can send me a text, 81333. Start your text 3CR. And we talk about the ease of listening these days. Don't forget, you can now download, a podcast of this show. The first one went up last Friday. They're going to kind of go online sort of Friday afternoon, just after lunchtime, 1, 2, 3 o'clock, something like that. You can download it by going to the BBC podcast page. I'll post the link on Facebook and Twitter in a bit. You will be able to download it on iTunes, but until the boffins at the BBC literally flick a switch on a computer, you can't find it. It will be there, but you can't find it. Now, researchers say there's a lack of support for people who've been in intensive care and then return home. Almost 300 people were surveyed for the study in the Critical Care Journal. Many were found to be still in pain or have problems walking months after they left. Well, Barry Williams was involved in the study. Morning, Barry.
Good morning.
300 in the sample. It's not a huge sample, is it? How reliable are these findings?
Well, it's not huge. That's exactly right. Let me just explain. We're coming at it purely from the patients and relatives' point of view. I represent patients and relatives to the Intensive Care Society. You're right, 300 is not a large sample. That's why we call it a preliminary study, exploratory study, and what we do need now is a more detailed study, a much larger number of patients and relatives, and possibly involving some other European countries, so we get a large number of patients, so we get some statistical significance.
So what did you find, Barry? What were the findings?
Well, the study confirmed exactly what we as patients and relatives have felt for some time based on our own experiences. Patients come out of intensive care physically very, very weak and psychologically at risk as well. These conditions are caused simply by the nature of the treatment in intensive care, which requires heavy sedation, often ventilator, and patients immobile for long periods of time. This causes enormous wastage of the muscle, hence the physical weakness. The high level of sedation to keep patients unconscious, to allow treatments, quite distressing treatments to be carried out, will cause hallucinations later on as well. So there's a compounding of the problems there as a result of the treatment. But what we've got to remember is that intensive care medicine, the treatment of intensive care patients, has moved on very, very quickly over the last 10 to 15 years, and the advances made have been quite excellent. When we think back something like 10, 15 years ago, something like 60% of all patients going into intensive care would sadly die. Now that figure's less than 40%, so it's a huge, huge change. And the profile of patients has changed as well, much older profile than previously. So there's a very different consequence now of what's happening in intensive care and when patients come out.
What is the problem? Are we saying that there's not enough support for them when they leave, and that needs to be improved?
Yeah, this is exactly it. Patients should not stay in hospital longer than is necessary, and certainly with intensive care patients, the time comes when they are better off at home, although they are physically and psychologically very weak, because the home environment is the right environment for them to be cared for and recover. What is lacking is, unfortunately, care in the community has just not kept pace with the advances in intensive care treatment. So there's a sort of a gap there now that's lagging behind. And it's simple structural things that cause a problem. What's needed is home physiotherapy, not hospital-based physiotherapy, not written instructions for a patient who's weak and unable to do things to follow. It needs somebody there to help them mount the stairs.
But there's not the money, is there? As someone, my mum had needed physiotherapy, and she had to go to the hospital once a month, I think, was all they could afford to give her. There isn't the money, is there, for things like that?
Well, it's the structural thing that needs looking at, and one's got to work out the economic benefits of putting these treatments in place as opposed to not putting them in place. The consequences these reporters highlighted quite clearly is that there's enormous financial loss on the families of patients who've been in intensive care, and something like 80% of the patients are cared for by their families, and something like 30% of those families, one or more, lose their jobs during the course of caring for a patient. So the economic consequence is quite severe. But just going back to the argument that there's not sufficient money to put in extra physiotherapy support, if we look at the whole picture of what's going on and what isn't happening, simple adjustments within that framework should bring about changes required, and we don't think it's going to cost an enormous amount of money. And simple things like temporary disability parking permits would help enormously. They'd speed up recovery because patients could get out and about. Temporary home modifications, not massive home modifications, but simple things like allowing a patient to get in and out of the bath, go to the toilet unaided, help with the cooking, that sort of thing. Only temporary. You can't get these things now because the situation, the provisions don't allow it. Acceptance that there may be a temporary carer's allowance, again, for a finite period. The system doesn't allow that at all.
Barry, we have to end it there. Thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate your time. Hope you feel you got your message across. It's Barry Williams there. 08459 455 555 if you'd like to have your say on that. We're talking about the Now. I don't believe this. We're talking about the Now That's What I Call Music compilations. And Paul Scoynes, political reporter and 80s chartbuster, has sent me an eBay link for Now That's What I Call Music 4 on eBay. It's only got 18 chart-topping hits. The Spice Girls, Backstreet Boys, Chumbawamba, 911, 98 Degrees, is that a group? Hanson, oh, I do like Hanson. I do. I think they're brilliant. Right, so that's what I call Music 4. Have a guess what that's going for on eBay. It's had 45 bids. Have a guess. Do you know what? I'll tell you after the news, because it's incredible. That's What I Call Music 4. It's on eBay, 45 bids, so it's popular. I'll tell you what it's going for in a few minutes. A couple of texts. Christian of Luton texts about the EDL. We protect the right of the extremist Muslims to march and display racism, but it seems it's one rule for one, a different for the EDL. P.S. I'm not condoning in any way the vandalism. I don't know if it is a different rule for the EDL, Christian. They both seem to be allowed to go on the streets and say what they want to say, I think. And on the HS2, David from Buckingham says, it makes me feel sick to think this government can compulsory buy any property. These are people's homes and they're being forced out. Money won't bring back the memories of their homes. Scrap the plan. Is it really worth it? I don't believe so.
Get the latest news and sport online at bbc.co.uk/3 counties.
Yeah?
Yeah.
OK. I can't believe this.
What can't you believe?
Now That's What I Call Music 4.
Yeah. Which had the Spice Girls on it.
The Spice Girls on it.
Was it that long ago?
So there's one here, That's What I Call Music 4. It's had 9 bids. This one's got 6 days on, OK? 6 days to go. 150 quid. Yeah, that's fine. It's got 6 days to go. There's another one that's got 6 days to go. 155 quid. This is Now That's What I Call Music 4. There's one, I can't believe this. It's got 1 day, 3 hours left. Have you seen how much it's going for?
Yeah.
£360. £360 to have Boys to Men, Michael Learns to Rock and Sheryl Crow all on one handy compact disc.
Bit of a money-maker nostalgia, isn't it?
I can't believe that. What idiot. What? And the person who's buying that is an idiot. I will burn them that CD for 50 quid. And I'll draw them a picture of a pig.
I think that might be illegal. But your pig won't really be just like the pig with shades on. Maybe it won't be too much of a cute copy. You might be all right. Carry on, yeah.
You might be all right, yeah. Carry on, yeah. Go on. Go on, kid. I'll go to foot of our stairs. £360. £360? No. It's had 45 bids on it. There's a day to go. If you've got Now That's What I Call Music 4 on CD, featuring Hanson, All Saints, and Aqua, Dr. Jones, not Barbie Girl, you're sitting on a gold mine. Wowzers. That's shocked me into silence. Very rarely does that happen. I'm trying to think if I got one at home, but of course I haven't, because only girls bought them. Right, lots coming up between now and JVS at 9 o'clock, including disappointing day for some yesterday. We'll be listening and speaking to Watford fans. I'm really keen to get a Watford fan and a Crystal Palace fan live on the radio together. If we can't create peace in Luton, and we've tried, and it would seem we're failing miserably, can we at least create some peace? I want a Crystal Palace fan to commiserate with a Watford fan, and a Watford fan to say, well done, mate, you deserved it. 75% of people living along the route of the HS2 who apply for compensation face being rejected. Are you one of them? And we'll be taking your calls on those Now That's What I Call Music compilations. 30 years old. Turns out 4 is worth 360 quid. Facebook.com/BBC3CR. Text 81333, start your text 3CR. Or, the best way to get in touch, of course, is to give me a phone call. 08459 455 555.
Across beds, hearts and bucks.
This is BBC Three Counties Radio.
There is controversy raging about this Now 4. It is called Now 4, but yet Now That's What I Call Music 4. But someone has texted in, the Now 4 album can't be right. I remember having Now 5, and it had all 80s songs on it. All I remember about it is that it had a pig in sunglasses. Well, we stumbled on something here. No one's quite sure what's going on. 08459 455 555. On to slightly more serious issues. Police say the key to finding out who killed a 20-year-old man in Luton lies with the community. They're appealing for help in tracing 3 people in relation to the stabbing which happened in Thrales Close late on Sunday night. Our reporter Justin Dealey has been in Marsh Farm. Morning, Justin. What's the latest?
Well, officers were called to a property in Thrales Close in Marsh Farm at around 8:15 on Sunday after they received reports that somebody had been stabbed. The firearms unit attended the property where the victim was found with serious injuries. He was rushed to the L&D hospital but was pronounced dead shortly afterwards. Now, as you say there, Ian, the police say the key is local people here, the local community coming forward with information. This is DCI Steve Collin. He's from the Bedfordshire, Hertfordshire and Cambridgeshire Major Crimes Unit.
I'm looking for a group of 3 people that were caught on CCTV in the Thrales Close, Purley Centre area of Marsh Farm on Sunday. They are a black male on a bike, a black male with a dog on a lead, and significantly a younger girl, probably a teenager, white female teenager, with long dyed hair, which is in a ponytail.
And you've been talking to people this morning, haven't you, Justin? What have they been saying?
People are concerned. I mean, we heard from one youngster earlier when I put the question to him, do you think people will come forward? He said, well, people don't want to be seen as a grass. So, as far as he was concerned, people wouldn't come forward. And he was with his friends just round the corner from this incident. The town, of course, on Sunday, on a high from Carnival. Carnival passed off peacefully. It was a fantastic event. But people are concerned. I have been talking to locals this morning, and this is what they've had to say.
Needless to say, it's a tragedy, and it would be lovely if, peace could be restored. Marsh Farm's got a bad name and a bad reputation, particularly because of recent events, and we're just hoping that, things can calm down, and that people who live within the community and the surrounding area don't feel threatened by, recent events and what's been happening.
Madam, you went to school with a person who was stabbed over the weekend. What was he like when he was at school?
He was a nice guy. Didn't really know him that well, but knew of him.
You must be shocked then.
Yeah, it's more worrying, because obviously the kid's growing up in Marsh Farm and stuff. You don't want him seeing that kind of thing, but...
So, do you think people are going to come forward with information? That's what the police want. They're looking for witnesses. Somebody's been stabbed to death. Are people going to come forward, or will they be too scared?
I think they'll probably be too scared to come forward at this point. The police have to get back into contact with the communities and the people that live in those communities and start being working together to get it sorted, because otherwise they're not going to get anything done at all. I think the violence will carry on as well at this point in time until they get it. I mean, having the armed Northern Ireland in Luton is crazy. I mean, the amount of weapons and heavy machine guns that the police have got walking around, it's like Belfast. It shouldn't be like that in Luton. It shouldn't at all.
Well, madam, as somebody who lives in Marsh Farm, know the area incredibly well, what's your reaction to the fact that somebody was stabbed to death there over the weekend?
That's really terrible. It's very, very terrible. And I'm sad that is really happening in our area at the moment. I'm sorry about that.
Can Marsh Farm recover?
Yes, I think so. I think it can recover from the situation it is right now.
Well, Justin Dealey, thank you very much indeed. More sad news in Luton. 08459 455 555.
Across beds, hearts and bucks.
This is BBC Three Counties Radio.
Jez is in Wycombe. Morning, Jez.
Morning.
Are you a fan of the Now That's What I Call Music?
Yes.
Oh.
I've got all of them.
What?
Every single one.
Really?
Yes.
Why?
I don't know, just a collectible thing. I just like collecting music. It's just something that I started, and I just thought I might as well carry on.
But it's not really music on there, is it?
Not now. I have to say, now they're a bit naff. There's a lot of rubbish on there. There's still the occasional good track, but I just came to the conclusion that I've started, so I'll finish, like Mastermind, I suppose.
Well, it turns out they're worth a few quid.
Yeah, I know they are. I actually bid for them on eBay, the early ones that I didn't have, the ones to sort of fill in the gaps, sort of like 2s, 3s and 4s. I bid for them and paid quite a lot of money for them.
How much? What's the most you've paid for a Now compilation?
I think I paid about 70 quid for one.
Oh, mate. Listen, I'm not in any way condoning illegal burning of music or anything like that, but just make your own, mate. Print the cover off with a colour printer. You can get them anywhere, and just burn your own CD.
I think the reason why I did it was because I used to do DJing. I don't now, but I used to DJ hospital radio, and I used to be a mobile DJ. And the reason why I started collecting them was because then I had all the up-to-date chart music. That was my reason behind it. And obviously, you've got to prove you bought the original, so that's probably why I started buying them in the first place. You know, that's why I kept it going, if you like.
There is controversy over this now. That's what I call music 4.
Yeah, I can clarify that.
Please, it's going for 360 quid on eBay. We've had several people saying, "Well, calm down, mate. It didn't have the Spice Girls on. It had Lionel Richie."
No, let's get this straight. Basically, the situation. Will you not shut up? That's why it's my birds. I'll come out the room.
Oh God, for goodness sakes, can't you? No, I was going to say something horrible then. Throttle them. No, don't do that.
I've got 43 of them.
It would take a while, wouldn't it?
Right. Anyway, basically, the situation with that is, I know what you're coming from. I think EMI produced the original Now That's What I Call Music compilation.
Yeah.
And there's another company. I don't know what record label it is, but much later started producing the Now That's What I Call Music.
Shut those birds up, Jez! Seriously, you're doing my nutting. Goodness, how can you live with that row going on all the time?
You get used to it.
Are they indoors?
Yeah.
Do you let them fly freely?
Yes.
What? All of them?
Yes.
Oh, no!
Not all at the same time. It would be absolute bedlam if I did that.
That'd be like, how do you get them back in their cage?
Oh, a lot of them go back in on their own.
What kind of birds are they?
Budgies.
Why would you have 43 budgies?
Well, I breed them, and I I've rehomed quite a few. I've got a lot of ex-show budgies that I've rehomed, and people unwanted pets and things, and I breed them as well.
Is it true if you put food dye on the egg, they come out that colour?
There is, there is a practice where they have something called rainbow chicks. They only do it with chickens, I think. Oh. But there is some. It's highly illegal, obviously.
No, of course, no, don't do it. But how do you do it?
You can inject the egg with something, and it actually, when the chicks come out, they come out that colour. The feathers are that colour.
Isn't that cute? It's a shame that's illegal.
It's highly illegal.
Anyway, so go on. This is. Yeah, don't do it, kids. But if you do, send me a picture.
At home.
But don't do it.
Nice colours as they are.
So hang on. But so this I've had someone else get in touch saying that this specific £360 Now That's What I Call Music 4 is from Asia.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes, it does say Malaysia on the back. So there's an implication there. You've not got that one, have you, Jez?
Which one's that?
You've not got this one, have you? The Asian one, have you? The Asian 4?
No, it's probably Bangor or something, I don't know.
No, it's not. It's the Spice Girls and Hanson. And I've seen both of those groups in concert.
That's not the original Now 4. This is the other one that they started producing much later.
Yes.
See, this is where it's all got very confusing, because Now 4 certainly didn't have any of that stuff on it. This is like, we're talking about late 90s here.
Oh, my goodness. So what was on Now 4?
Oh, my God. It was sort of, I'm trying to think, that was about 85-ish, wasn't it? Stuff like
your birds are actually driving me insane.
China Crisis and Madness and all that sort of stuff. It was just sort of Howard Jones sort of 80s stuff. I'll have to look it all up, because it's been so long since I've...
Have you got them all on a shelf in order?
Yes, I have.
Yes. No, not unfortunately, Jez. You are a gentleman, and that's what we do as gentlemen. I'm going to let you and your birds go, because, to be honest, they really were doing my nutting. How could you live like that? I don't want to cast aspersions on Jez, but I suspect he's a lunatic. No, I mean that from a loving place, but I really suspect he needs help. He's got all of the Now That's What I Call Music CDs and 43 birds that roam freely around his house. Imagine cleaning up all of that poop.
I don't own a single Now album, but what I do have is on cassette from 1985, Now That's What I Call Music, the Christmas tape, and it comes out every year.
On cassette?
On cassette.
Good for you, Adam. I'm a big fan of cassettes. I think they've been sorely neglected in historical purposes, so well done you.
Thank you very much.
Adam Glenn's a puppy. Oh, I left my... Sorry.
Adam Glenn, BBC Three Counties Radio.
Adam, thanks very much. By the way, Jonathan, you're on, love. Well, I've just been told, I've been informed by my production team, that Jonathan Vernon-Smith doesn't want to come down and do his daily trail. Now, we normally do about 16, 17 minutes past. I was kind of staggering things there to give him a couple of minutes. He was obviously late. No, he wants to come down after past and do it. Well, maybe I don't want him to come down and do it after past. It's my show. I don't say to Jonathan, I think you should do the Consumer Hour at 10, because it's easier for me to listen. I don't say that. Yet he's dictating where and when things happen in my show. I see. Right. I think a call to Cobra needs to be made to... no, not Cobra. Ofcom. No, not Ofcom. My agent. That's it. Yes. Now, only 25 people living along the route of HS2 have been approved for compensation so far. That's become clear, 25% I believe, that's become clear from figures for those who've been successful so far along the route, which cuts through the Chilterns in Buckinghamshire. Iain Telford is a partner at John Nash and Company estate agents in Amersham. He says the HS2 project has caused major problems for his business.
In those where the properties are located near the HS2 site, yes they are, or where there are escape routes, or at the end of where the tunnel is actually going to come out.
Have you had cases of clients who simply cannot sell at the moment?
Yes, without doubt. One particular client at Hyde End, who I believe has now received their compensation, but we actually had no viewings whatsoever.
It must be difficult. Obviously, the housing market has been a difficult few years anyway, but as the market is picking up now, but for people in this area, they're stuck, really.
HS2 has always been a great concern, and certainly we will inform anybody who's going to be buying near the site that it will be affected. It's mainly due to the construction, because obviously the location we are here in Amersham, most of it is underground, but it's during the construction that's going to be the disruption through the building.
What kind of reaction do you normally get from people if you have a house that's on the HS2 kind of route? I guess they will immediately say, we're not interested anymore.
Not interested, and we don't want to view it, especially this particular house, which was only 120 metres from the actual track.
What does it mean to your business here? Has it had an impact on you?
At the present time, it hasn't really affected us. I think as it becomes more real, and things will start to come to the fore, and maybe we will see the general reaction, but at the moment it's not an issue.
Because obviously people who are affected personally are looking for compensation if they can get it, or trying to sell and just get away from it. But as a business that could be directly affected by it too, would you ever consider seeking compensation?
Yes, very much so. But unfortunately a lot of people have not received the compensation, and they won't do. But we'll have to see what happens. We have been exploring with certain clients, yes, and some of them have received compensation. But these are clients that are further out, say from Great Missenden and beyond, where unfortunately the track will be above ground.
Well, that was estate agent Iain Telford, who works at John Nash and Company estate agents in Amersham. Joined now by John McDowran and Alison Hussein, who've both been after compensation. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
John, we'll start with you if that's okay. Tell me your story. What's happened?
Well, we sold our property in February 2010.
And where was this?
We received an offer. It's Stoke Mandeville.
Stoke Mandeville, thank you.
We received an offer which we accepted. 3 weeks after that, HS2 was announced, and of course, as we were only 75 yards from the track, our sale fell through immediately. And our estate agent tried hard, but our property became unsaleable. We applied for compensation in the March of that year, and were refused on the grounds that we met 4 of the 5 criteria that they laid down about having had our house on the market for a year, being in the right location, being affected by the proposed development. But they said that whilst they accepted we were suffering financially, because obviously we were having to pay a mortgage that we shouldn't be paying and all the running costs, we weren't suffering sufficiently to warrant compensation.
You weren't suffering sufficiently?
That's the wording, exactly the wording in the document.
Did they say what you would have to do to suffer sufficiently?
No, I subsequently reapplied, because you had to wait 3 months between applications, and I phoned them and asked them what they needed from me to make the case, and they refused to give me any information, saying it was entirely up to me. My second application was refused on the grounds of lack of proof of financial hardship. They decided that I wasn't suffering sufficiently financially again, so we subsequently applied again 3 months after that. I got David Liddington, our local MP, involved, who was very helpful. He wrote supporting my case. I was retired early because my business had failed as a result of the recession, and I failed to get further employment, so financially we were up against it. We then applied again, and they decided, every time they refused us on a slightly different technicality, but always on the financial hardship side. And they refused us again. They said that they thought we had an ISA in place to repay our mortgage, which we didn't. And they said, well, prove it. I said, well, I can prove what I own, but I can't prove what I haven't got.
Yes.
Anyway, this went on for just over 2 years. And the final application, I was getting quite demanding with my MP and saying that if I didn't get something done this time, I would demand to see David Cameron and sit in front of him and look him in the eye and ask him why he was ruining my life and my retirement, because our funds were dwindling quite fast. In the 2 and a bit years that we had to retain the house, it cost us over £50,000 in mortgage and maintenance costs that we should have been without, because of course we were living just on a small pension. And David Lidington had a meeting with the Secretary of State for Transport, and my case was discussed. My final application was backed up with I had to swear affidavits with solicitors about my financial status, and this was basically, I did everything. My date of birth, inside leg measurement, everything possible, because they were saying they wouldn't give you the information list they required. I had numerous conversations with them trying to get them to help me, and they refused completely. They clearly did everything they could not to pay compensation. But however, in September 2012, our application was successful. Our fourth application, my financial circumstances between the first application nearly 2.5 years before and my final application had not changed, except that I was £50,000 worse off. Nothing else had changed. It's just that by being persistent and keep on applying and refusing to take no for an answer, we were finally successful.
What a stressful 2 years that must have been. And you're now living in Cumbria, and you're happy, and you're settled, and you're enjoying your retirement, I hope.
Slightly poorer than I'd like to have been.
Yes. John, stay there, because your story may provide some hope and inspiration for Alison. Alison, you're struggling to get compensation for your property in Great Missenden, is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
What's your story?
Well, our story is probably 3 years ago. It starts 3 years ago when the line was first announced. We were just about to go up for sale because a similar thing, my husband's business had taken a bit of a bashing, so we felt, well, we really do need to sell our house, we need to recoup, start again, and then the line was announced, so we had to postpone because we thought, well, let's wait and see, maybe something might happen, it may not happen, etc. Probably about 6 months later, it became clear we needed to put the house up for sale. We needed to try, see what might happen. So we did. We put it up at a price to sell. So we were quite sort of smart from the beginning. We thought we won't overprice.
Yep.
The estate agent said, here's a good price to sell. And we had to pay an estate agent to actually market it because nobody would take it on.
Oh.
In the early days when they would turn up and say, lovely property, this is what we price it if things were different. So we had a struggle just to get somebody to market it in the first place.
Because they knew it was a waste of time. It wasn't going to sell.
Yes, they said it was a waste of time. We were at that point, we were about 75 metres from the line. So incredibly close. There's no sort of trees in between. So it's very, it's there, basically. So we did that. We waited for the 3 months. We marketed for 3 months, in fact, a little bit more. We did the application. We thought we did everything we needed, submitted every single thing, our life story, our bank statements, the whole lot. It's a very similar story to the other caller in that it came back and they actually said, you're not showing sufficient hardship. We weren't desperate enough. We weren't showing enough desperation. We thought, well, we have no money. Only one of us is working. The property's it's just too expensive for us now. We've got 2 young children, etc., etc. But that was that. So we had the letter. We couldn't believe it. We priced it to sell. So we've been, we thought.
You've not been greedy?
Not at all. No, because it's a barn conversion, so it's a tricky one anyway. In that it could be priced at a number of so we were quite smart and thought we'll keep it low, but that wasn't good enough. And as I say, we had hardly any viewings. So we then left it. My husband then got a job, which was really good news. So we were sort of out of the woods for a brief period of time, and then it became clear that we still, because we'd got debt from before, it was just carrying on really. So we put it up for sale again. This was probably about a year ago. Had a few viewings. We always get viewings because it's a barn conversion, people are just interested.
Yep.
Also, they don't know how far, where will the line be. But once you point it out, it's clear, it's very visible from our property. 3 months went by, all ready to resubmit again, but we managed to actually rent it out because we thought if we rent, that kind of puts off the inevitability, really. So we got a rental, which was supposed to be for a year, but unfortunately they moved out within the year. So we were then saddled with a house we were renting in, plus the house we were renting out.
We're running out of time, but where are you now, Alison?
Where we are now, we're ready to resubmit for the second time. We've been told that we really need to give letters from the bank, just provide as much information to say how it's not just the financial side, it's the actual the tell on the family, really, on the family life. We have no money. We really do need to sell this. It's hugely stressful. It's just been horrible. And now we're in debt significantly more than we were to start with.
Selling a house in normal circumstances is horrible and stressful. Having all of this on as well. We spoke to Helen German from HS2 Limited. She's the Exceptional Hardship Scheme Manager for the company. She says, Alison, that the scheme is fair.
Well, I have to say, I don't agree, because anybody is supposed to be able to fill the form out, but what you don't know is what you actually have to put in it to make it hold tight. I mean, we were told we weren't financially hard up enough. I don't know what they're expecting. Do they want us to be out on the street? Because that could be the next thing.
John, do you think that the scheme is fair?
No, not at all. It's biased against compensation deliberately, so make it very difficult, because they're so airy-fairy in their refusals, and they can angle it in different ways. It's not fair at all, and I think that the only thing I can advise your other caller, Alison, is to get your MP involved, write to everybody, get an affidavit sworn by a solicitor about your financial status that they can't argue with, because basically you supply information and they doubt it. They say, well, you're not telling the truth. So if you swear an affidavit, that's a serious document, and it's very unlikely that they'll disbelieve that.
We have to end it there. John, listen, congratulations. I'm glad you're enjoying your retirement in Cumbria. And Alison, I wish you the very best of luck. Selling a house at normal times is an awful situation. To have this hanging over you as well for a couple of years. And Alison, if it's okay, we'd like to keep in touch and just see how this pans out.
Across beds, hearts and bucks.
This is Iain Lee.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
Well, I might as well just go home now, and you can start now.
Why?
That wasn't even the computer, you. That was the real...
That was me.
I am building up a computer JVS.
Are you?
Yeah, so far I've got this.
Why?
And, go on, do it together. 3, 2, 1.
Why?
Do it in harmony.
What?
I'll do one. Why? I'm going to have a robot JVS.
I'm so sorry I'm late.
What on earth is going on?
We had some problems upstairs. Printers, you name it. It was all going... Why? Wrong. Never mind, I'm here now. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. And then you sent me a message saying, oh, do you not really want me to come down?
Well, I thought I heard you ranting and raving on air. I thought,
furious.
Well, I'm so sorry.
I'm furious. This is no way to respect a timetable. I have a drawn clock, and each section is filled, and you are in at 16 past 8.
Is everything going to go wrong now in this section of your clock?
Well, of course it is. We've got to speak to a Watford fan and a Palace fan. They're all queued up, and they're going to be pushed back, and then
I'm so sorry. Shall I crack on?
Well, could you just apologise a little bit more?
I'm really, really sorry.
Do it without laughing. That's a laugh. That's a laugh.
I'm not very good at grovelling.
Okay, so not grovel, just a sincere apology.
I'm very sorry.
Without the smirk or the red face. Oh, you can't do that. You've got sunburn.
I can't help the red face. I spent yesterday sitting in a garden with lashings of Pinot all day long, and consequently I am now Mr. Tomato Face.
Did you not put any cream on your face?
No, well, I didn't realise it was so strong.
Oh, look at you. You are just a hospital case waiting to happen.
I'm like Mr. Blobby.
Hang on a second. Oh, no. That doesn't help. Right, I was trying to play something to calm the mood.
You always play that dreadful noise. What is that noise? Is that Paul Scoynes?
It's Paul Scoynes playing I'm a Believer on a musical instrument. So, what's on your show this morning?
Coming up on the big phone in this morning from 9. Are the EDL good or bad for this country? Yesterday, more than 1,000 members of the Bedfordshire-based English Defence League took to the streets of London to protest against radical Islam. They gathered at the entrance of Downing Street, where they listened to their leadership blame the Muslim religion for the horrific killing of drummer Lee Rigby. Well, they held placards reading "Blood on your hands" and "GB RIP." They chanted "Muslim killers off our streets." On the day of that horrific killing, a similar protest had ended in some protesters throwing bottles at the police. Former Home Secretary David Blunkett has said we're living in a very nasty time with angry politics coming to the fore. Well, from 9 this morning, I want to hear your views. Are the EDL good or bad for this country? Perhaps the way that they have demonstrated since the terrible killing in Woolwich last week, you feel has been incredibly unhelpful for this country. Perhaps you believe it is going to divide this country massively. And actually, if the EDL really care about this country, what they should do is shut up. Your views from 9. Are the EDL good or bad from this country? For this country, we'll discuss it on the big phone in at 9.
What I don't understand is if they are defending England for me, although I've not asked them to do such a thing, and they believe so strongly and they're so passionate in what they're doing, why do so many of them cover their faces? If I believed strongly in something I was protesting in, or a political movement, or a way of thought, I would be proud to display my face and associate that with the message.
Very good point. If I get to speak to the English Defence League after 9, I'll put that very question to them.
Tommy Robinson's not answering his phone, is he?
No, he's not.
OK, JVS, thank you very much indeed.
Across beds, hearts and bucks.
This is Iain Lee.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
This is Iain Lee, BBC Three Counties Radio, here every weekday between 6 and 9 o'clock. There's also a podcast. You can't find it on iTunes yet. Hopefully today, but we'll post the link to the BBC podcast page. Now, the richest game in football has ended in disappointment for some, for Watford. Watford lost 1-0 to Crystal Palace in the playoff final at Wembley yesterday afternoon. Our reporter, Justin Dealey, has been dancing around like a merry little leprechaun and getting reaction. Morning, Justin.
Hello, Ian.
How are you feeling?
Very well, thank you.
Yes.
Let's not be unprofessional about this, being a Luton Town supporter.
You are really good at doing this impartiality, yet inside, you virtually tap danced into the office today. You were like Sammy Davis Jr. on those feet.
I just had a nice weekend in Brighton. That's what that was about. But
Watford... No, can I just... Sorry, I've got to just say... Right, so just to go off on a tangent, Dealey walks in dancing and singing and stuff, and he did make some rather rude comments about Watford, but then he said, do you know what, girls, I've just spent I had a cracking bank holiday. I went to an 80s disco in Brighton. I walked in, they were playing the Knack Marsharon. I thought, yes, this is the place for me.
Absolutely. And more to come on music before 9.
Oh, great.
But no, for years I've been ribbed about being a Luton supporter by Watford fans, but it was slightly dangerous for me yesterday because I was actually talking to Watford supporters in Hemel, and somebody said to me, "You're that Justin Dealey, aren't you?" Yes, I am. You live in Hemel, don't you? Yes, I do. I'm thinking, please don't say you support Luton. I'm surrounded by Watford supporters. But I was talking to fans as they arrived back in Hertfordshire last night. Clearly they weren't happy. This is what they had to say.
Gutted. Absolutely gutted, really. Disappointed. To be honest, the way we played today, we didn't turn up. We could have played a lot better than that. Yeah, and I think a lot of Watford fans would be absolutely gutted at the moment. No, not happy at all, really. But there we go, that's football for you, isn't it?
Yeah. And just lastly, the script, was it almost written in advance for Kevin Phillips?
It's always the way, isn't it? It doesn't matter. With Watford, it happens all the time. What I'm going to say, it doesn't matter. We always say, if an ex-Watford player comes back, plays against you, he's going to score. And sure enough, Kevin Phillips scored. And fair play to him. He didn't celebrate. And I don't know if you watched him turn away. Yeah. He ran away and kept his hands down. So, yeah, fair play to him. He's a great player. He still is, Not a lot we can do about that, really, now. But look forward to the Championship next season, I suppose, now.
Disappointed. Yeah. Disappointed. Very disappointed. That's a poor game for Watford, to be quite honest with you.
Pretty cheesed off because we never even turned up today. How's that?
I just thought Palace turned up, done the job, and they were a good side. They were the better team, and they done the job, but unlucky to Watford. At least they had a go, but Palace deserved to win, so...
Well, I'm a bit gutted. I thought we would score. But the longer it went on, the more I felt Phillips would get his nose in there.
We got worries, don't we? We got the loan signings, where they're going to go. Vidra, is he going to stay? We've got the transfer embargo as well. We're not quite sure where we are now. It's a bit of a concern for all of us, really.
I'm chuckling, Justin.
What are you laughing at?
Because in that report...
Yeah.
in that report, I can hear you doing your mock sincerity. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You must be devastated. Yeah. Tell me about it.
I kept it professional at all times, Jesse. That's the thing. When you work in local radio and you live in the area, these things are going to come up from time to time. But they had a massive opportunity yesterday, and I think that all Watford supporters will look back on that in years to come and think, why didn't we do that? Because Palace going into that game, they weren't on great form at all. Their striker Glenn Murray, he was out injured. Watford had a massive chance yesterday, and for whatever reason, Luton, their players, and they've got some fantastic players, just didn't turn up and perform on the day.
Well, Justin, go and sit in your little radio buggy or whatever it's called. Turn your radio up loud and listen to this, because what you're about to hear now is the best of humanity. We've had the worst of humanity over the last week or so. We're about to hear the best of humanity. I wanted a Watford fan, I wanted a Palace fan to come on the air. It's like bringing Israel and Palestine together. I wanted to come on air and metaphorically shake hands. I think that's going to happen. Representing Watford, Pete Fincham. Good morning, Pete.
Good morning.
And representing Palace, we've got Leslie Palmer. Good morning, Leslie.
Morning.
Now, you can tell which one's which by the tone of their voice. Now, Pete, let's start with you. How are you feeling after yesterday, mate? You all right?
Feeling grateful we don't have to go to Hyde, Tamworth, Southport, Gateshead, Lincoln, Nuneaton, then Salisbury, Cambridge, Alfreton next season for a start.
Yeah, so grateful you're not playing all those big teams. You must be.
Absolutely. Go and sit in your car, little man.
Okay. Leslie. Sorry. How are you feeling, Leslie?
Happy. I don't think it's really entirely sunk in yet, because, to be honest, I'm not sure a lot of Palace fans, after our bad run into the final, thought we were actually going to do it. But, as you say, on the day, we just performed.
Now, listen, there's been a lot of tension in Luton, across the country recently, and I just thought, can we do something? Can we bring peace to the area? So, Leslie, as a Crystal Palace fan, is there anything you'd like to say to Watford fan Pete?
Yeah, hard luck, and Watford and Palace aren't teams that are that dissimilar. We have to take our breaks when we get them, and yours will probably come soon.
Now, Pete, as a Watford fan, is there anything you'd like to say to Palace fan Leslie?
Yeah, I mean, Leslie knows the score. She's been up there before. She'll probably have a pretty mediocre season, which will ultimately end in probable relegation. Listen, have a great time, and look, let's be honest. Like, you deserved it yesterday. We were pretty poor, and also we had enough chances over the season not to be in the playoffs when we were 2-0 up at home to yourselves, and came out to 2-2. Actually, Kevin Phillips, when he was playing for Blackpool, because he's also a loanee, when he scored the goal that got them back in the game up at Bloomfield Road earlier in the season at 2-0. So, I mean, Palace, good luck to you.
Pete, no, I'm not. No, Pete, I'm not having this. Leslie, I apologise. This is not what I planned.
He's allowed to be bitter.
No, I'm not bitter. Good luck, genuinely. I don't want to go to Barnsley. I'd rather be in your position. I'm not bitter. You deserved it yesterday. I think we cocked up our season at the end, and it was a real shame. But Palace, have fun. I mean, have a great time.
But it's only going to last a year. Is that what you're saying, Pete?
Yeah, of course. Over the 46 games, we were better than Palace. We finished third, but that wasn't good enough.
Over the game that mattered, Leslie. I apologise. I think that.
As I say, he's feeling a bit emotional, I can tell.
Well, listen, you've both been very, very good sports. Leslie, I suggest you've been a slightly better sport than Pete. Pete did, offer the kind of hand of friendship. Then he pulled it back, stuck his thumb to his nose and waggled his fingers, didn't he? That's what he did. He got a few digs at Justin Dealey, so that makes it all worthwhile there.
Across beds, hearts and bucks.
This is Iain Lee.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. This is Iain Lee, BBC Three Counties Radio. 08459 455 555 is the phone number if you want to give us a call. The UK's biggest and longest selling music compilation album is celebrating its 30th anniversary. We've sent Justin Dealey out on the streets to talk to people. Morning, Justin.
Hello, Ian.
Should we play some of the tracks that made That's What I Call Music, the very first one, famous?
Oh, please.
Would love to get your opinions on some of these bad boys.
Come on.
What do you reckon, Dealey?
Casey and the Sunshine Band, yep, love it.
Love it. Everybody wants your love. Everybody wants your love.
Oh, Culture Club. You come and go. Oh, UB40. You're not going to sing, or is it going to be me?
Waiting for you to sing. You were singing along very, very nicely. Well, there's some of the classics there, although I cannot stand UB40. I would rather have my ears pulled out.
Yeah,
and thrust
only
on
the
spikes.
biggest selling reggae band in the world.
Yeah,
but yeah.
awful.
Yeah.
Listen, Kokomo was the biggest selling single the Beach Boys ever had. Doesn't mean it's a good song.
Now, wasn't that the longest time span between a number one?
You are very good, 27 years.
Yes.
Yeah, well done. You're at Good Vibrations.
From Cocktail,
and that from Cocktail. Well done. Now, you've been speaking to people about the Now tapes they had. I'm guessing it was mainly girls that bought these things.
No, I love them. I have to say, I grew up on these albums.
Again, I'm guessing it's mainly girls that bought these things.
Do you know what? Lamar appears on the very first Now album twice.
Yeah.
Once with Kajagoogoo, but his face is not actually on the album with Kajagoogoo because he'd left the band by then. Once as a solo artist as well. I've always kind of based my appearance on Lamar. I was down the pub the other week. I was outside having a cigarette. There I was, all dressed up nice and smart. Had my lovely suit jacket on, low-cut T-shirt, showing off some bronze chest. And there was two thugs outside, and they started singing Too Shy at me. It all got very embarrassing. And there was a girl with them, and she said, please, you two, just shut up. Leave him alone. Leave him alone.
Stop picking on Lamar.
I was bullied. But for me, the Now albums went downhill at Now 29, because you used to get them in a big chunky case.
Yeah.
The big chunky CDs. And then they went to the slim CD and reduced the price.
You really have no life at all, do you?
But you've been saying this morning that women bought these albums and that real men didn't buy them. I've been in Luton this morning getting people's memories of their very first Now CD, and this is what people had to say.
Leslie, what's your memories of buying your first ever Now album?
My first memories of my first ever Now album was probably Woolies.
Yeah.
And it was probably this is so cool, these are original artists, all on the same vinyl, for a good price.
Yeah. So you've got fond memories then?
I have, yeah.
Do you still buy them now?
Not quite so often.
Can I ask why?
Oh, I suppose it's all down to your iPhone and everything now, isn't it? Although you can still buy them on there.
Yeah.
And it's probably due to not being all my taste in music now.
John, you're a massive music fan, so you must have every single Now album, surely?
Funnily enough, I've never bought one.
Why?
Rubbish.
What do you mean
Absolute rubbish? Probably one or two decent hit records, and all the rest were non-entity records that nobody ever buy.
You see, Ian's got this theory that men like yourself will go out and buy real albums, and women, they would be the ones buying the compilation albums. Would you go along with that?
Yeah. I bought things like Stevie Wonder and lots of Motown, Temptations, Four Tops, those sort of albums, but compilations...
So no regrets about not having one single Now album in your collection?
No.
Well, let's put this theory to the test. Here we have Fiona and Jason. Couple, are you married?
We got 10 kids.
You got 10 kids? Wow. That's impressive. Been a busy boy, haven't you?
Just a bit, yeah.
Okay, so let's talk Now albums.
Now CDs.
The Now CDs. So, are you a big fan of the Now CDs?
Yes, I am.
Yeah?
Yeah,
Now,
I
your
am.
other half here,
Yeah.
would he go and buy them?
No, he'd want me to buy them, but he'd want to listen to them.
What, because of the shame?
Because he's a big fan of the Spice Girls.
Is this true?
That is true.
It's all getting very embarrassing. So what you're saying is that you would go and buy them because you enjoy them, but your partner wouldn't buy them because he would feel embarrassed about doing so.
Yeah.
Well, there you go, you see, Justin. It pretty much proves my point, doesn't it?
Yeah, I have to say, how long have we been working together for now?
Too
About
long.
a year or so,
Yeah,
I
8
think
months.
I'm actually going to write this down in my diary, because I think that's the first time in all of those hours, those weeks, those months that we've been working together that you've actually been right.
Oh, ho. You're fired. I can do that. You're fired.
Lovely.
Simple as that. Stay
me
on
a
the line.
favour.
Ricky's in Dunstable. Morning, Ricky.
Good morning.
I'm fine, thank you. Do you back my decision to fire Justin Dealey?
No, he's all right. He is.
He's what?
He's okay. He is.
He's okay.
Thanks.
He's okay. Who's your favourite person on Three Counties Radio, Ricky?
Well, we all are, because it's a good for the first thing in the morning till 7 o'clock at night.
Ian wants an ego massage.
If I could understand what Ricky was saying, then I would get one. Now, Ricky, I'm teasing you. You've been a good sport. You've got lots of Now compilations, haven't you?
What the tapes?
You got the cassettes?
60s?
Yep.
I've got one to when they stopped doing them.
Right. So I've
got one in the box up in the loft. I just wonder what they're worth now.
Well, Justin?
What are they worth? Well, in actual fact, I found out last night one of my Now CDs is worth about £500. So I'll be on eBay later on. If you've got the original vinyl, obviously it depends on the condition of the album. But if you've got the early ones on CD, they're the ones that are worth the money.
But Ricky, you've got them on cassette because you stopped buying them when they're on CD. Is that correct?
Well, no, I bought them CD as well. Oh. You know, I mean, but all the ones on the tape I should buy around the boot sale. But about 5 or 7 years ago, now one was costing about £500 to £700. Oh. What it's costing now, I don't know.
Ricky, you're a girl.
No, I'm a bloke.
No, you're a girl because only girls buy Now compilations. Blokes go and buy proper albums.
Right, okay then.
We like the deep album cuts, don't we?
Yeah, I think they're right now, but they're too expensive to buy now.
What's the best Now compilation, Ricky? What's the best one?
I think the ones in the 90s and that sort of like the better ones.
Yeah.
Now the music nowadays is not that good, is it?
It's rubbish nowadays. What is it? Right. Who is this Lady Gaga and Lana Del Rey? What's all that about?
I don't know.
A load of old guff. Ricky.
The time messages.
Huh?
They're time machines, they are, I think.
Ricky, you've been a good sport. I appreciate your call this morning. Thank you very much. There we go. Ricky, you see, Ricky has got he's got lots of them.
A lot of people have. I mean, my dad has got every single one. He's got every single, and there is a good reason behind that.
There is no good reason behind it, Justin.
There is a reason, and the reason being that he worked for Virgin, and of course the Now albums were on Virgin Records, and we watched the documentary last night, and the people that he used to work with were on that documentary.
So he nicked them?
Yes.
So your dad has got them because he's a thief?
Yes.
Okay, well that's fair enough. All right, Justin, well listen, thanks very much for calling.
Yeah, thanks, Ian.
Ta-ta.
Bye.
There we go. I'll have words with him later on. It's the attitude. The reporting is adequate. Is adequate for what he does. It's the attitude is the problem with JD, and that is what needs to be brought back under control. Listen, I've been mentioning the podcast. I will mention it a bit more if you don't mind. It's a kind of a weekly best of the show. We don't call it the best of. It's just called Iain Lee. You'll be able to find it on iTunes at some point. Hopefully today. I'm going to give those boffins a real kick up the backside and get them to kick. I won't. I'll send an email saying, could you do this for me, please? But if you go to the BBC podcast page, the link of which I will post on the Facebook page very, very soon, you can get it there. It was the first one last week. We're going to release it every Friday. And also, if you've got a story that you think we should be doing, then give me an email, ian.lee@bbc.co.uk, ian.lee@bbc.co.uk. We've had a few stories recently that have come from you, the listener. So if you think, it can be something huge that affects your whole county or your town or your street, or it can be something that just affects you. If you think it's important, then do send me an email. And I've got a couple of emails I must get back to today from people who've been in touch. ian.lee@bbc.co.uk. Back tomorrow at 6. JVS is up next. Ta-ta.
On FM, AM, online and digital radio.
This is BBC Three Counties Radio.
Thank you, Iain.